Hey everybody, it's Matt. Welcome back to the Journey Church podcast. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you can automatically get our weekly episodes. And you might want to go ahead and subscribe to our Journey YouTube channel as well. You'll find messages, music, interviews, inspiring stories, and more for you all right there. Now, I hope this episode helps you take your next step in following Jesus. Today, for those of you who you're not a church person, you don't consider yourself a Jesus follower, maybe this is some of the latest research, maybe you're one of the 1 in 4 Americans who says, I don't think churches actually make our communities better. I'm so glad you're here today. This is a perfect day for you to be here. Today we're starting a brand new series that we're calling Be Known for Something Good. And for the next 3 weeks, I want to explore with you what it means to be for. You hear us talk about for, that we want to be for you, we want you to know God's for you. I want to explore exactly what we mean by that. And the reason I think that is so important to explore and so important for us to talk about is because our Savior, He modeled it for us. Our King, He set the example for us, and it's why it's so important to those of us who are Jesus followers that we figure this out. I mean, if you read the accounts of His life, you realize really quickly how interesting it was that Jesus was for people who were nothing like Him. People who didn't believe like He believed in some cases, people who didn't behave like He behaved, people in some cases who didn't even like Jesus, and yet He was still for them. He would demonstrate to them this extraordinary love, grace, truth, forgiveness, kindness, compassion, care. We could go on. And it just revolutionized people's lives because of what they experienced from Him. And then, to the surprise of everyone, I think, He decided He was going to leave this earth, and He took the movement and the mission and this message, and He put it into the hands of His followers, people like you and me, and He said, okay, you're responsible now, but you also have the opportunity to go and to share this and to show people just how much I'm for them. And I probably don't have to update you on this. Over the course of the last couple thousand years, the church has not always gotten that right. We've gotten it wrong plenty of times, and there are plenty of seasons and plenty of examples you can point to of churches that are just all about themselves, and I understand that, and I wouldn't argue that, but you do have to realize the gravitational pull of every human heart, including all of us in this room, is to be for ourselves, is to focus inward. And as a church, if you're not careful, it doesn't take long at all for you to drift and to start being for yourselves and focused on yourselves above other people. And so one of the things we do every single year is we decide to have a season where collectively as a church, we practice being for others the way Jesus is for us and the way Jesus is for them. And we have to practice because we'll drift and lose it real quickly if we don't. So we have to come back every single year and refocus and make sure that we do a good job of that. And that's why we do our annual for offering. And if you're new around here, I'll tell you what that is at the end. But first, I want to explain one of the reasons why it's so important for us to be followers of Jesus who are known for what, and more importantly, known for who Jesus was for. So there's this moment where Jesus was with His followers, and He's having a conversation with them about what's going to happen when history is over, if you will. What's going to happen at the end of time when everything is kind of put together and boxed up and finished, And Jesus says, hey, the thing I want you to know is I'm going to one day restore the world to the way it was intended to be, the way I created it to be. One day, everything's going to work the way it's supposed to work, and one day, the values that I introduce to the world are going to be the values of all the world. One day, everything's going to work like I planned and intended for it to, which you get this because even if you're not a Jesus follower, there's certain things that happen in the world now that you go, it shouldn't be that way. Or you go, that's not right. Nobody should have to go through, or nobody should have to deal with, or nobody should ever face. And you're right. And without realizing it, what you're expressing is you intuitively know that the way the world works isn't the way it was intended to work, that there's some things that are broken about it. And so Jesus is helping them understand, hey, I'm going to make everything new one day. It's all going to work the way it's supposed to. But in the meantime, He looks at His followers and He says, your job is to usher in, invite in, participate in as much of my kingdom right now in this world as you possibly can. And by kingdom, He didn't mean a government. He didn't mean a country. He wasn't thinking anything political. He meant your job right now is to bring as much of my values, as much of this is the way it ought to work, as much of that to this world as you possibly can. We're not just going to wait to the end and let it be as bad as it's going to be. I want you to usher in as much of that as possible until we get to the point where I'll make all things new. And so as he's explaining this to them, they're trying to understand exactly what that looks like. And Jesus tells them a series of parables, which are just made up stories designed to make a point. And Jesus would often use these stories to teach them what he was trying to teach them. So he tells them a series of them. I want to share one of them with you because it paints a beautiful picture of what Jesus values most and what's going to happen one day when we all stand in front of him and we see the impact, or we're rewarded for or given account of what we have done with our lives. So here's what Jesus said to him that day. He looks at him and he says, then the king, and remember this is a made up story, then the king will say to those on his right, but this is symbolic of Jesus king and his followers are who he's referring to. Then he says one day at the end of time, the king's going to say to all of you who follow him, here's what he's going to say. He's going to say, come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. In other words, Jesus says, hey, one day you're going to be standing in front of me and I'm going to reward you. I'm going to reward you for what you did with the life that I gave you. I'm going to reward you for what you did with the time you had on this earth, which raises the question, I'm sure his followers were thinking it, like, what could I possibly do that would cause Jesus to reward me? What could I possibly do that would honor God so much that he wanted to reward me in some way? Well, Jesus' answer to that question is quite shocking. It was not what they expected, because he explains to them a part of the scenario, a part of what they've done that's gotten God's attention. He goes on, he says, for I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. And I don't know this for sure, but I would imagine that crowd is all confused at this point because they couldn't separate, is this made up or is this real, So they're thinking, I don't think we've ever delivered food to Jesus. I don't understand what he's talking about because we haven't done this. But he just goes on. He keeps giving more examples. He says, for I was a stranger and you invited me in. They're going, well, okay, I don't think have we had him over to the house? I don't think we had him over to the house, If you grew up Southern Baptist, by the way, and the rest of you won't get this, if you grew up Southern Baptist, you were always told to invite Jesus into your heart. So the Southern Baptists in the crowd were like, I invite him in my heart. I never invite him to my house. I don't know how that works. Then he goes on and he says this, it gets worse. He says, I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick. You looked after me. This is, I'm sure the crowd's like, I didn't know God hit rock bottom, but apparently he's struggling. Like, did he lose his job? They're trying to wrap their heads around this because it doesn't make sense to them. Jesus is saying they have done things that they don't remember doing. But it gets funnier because then he looks at them and he says, not only that, but I was in prison and you came to visit me. To which they went, honey, grab the purse and the kids. Jesus came, pass a background check. We're not letting him in kids ministry. It's like, they're just so baffled as to what he's talking about. And as they're scratching their heads here, trying to figure it out. Jesus, as he's describing this, when this made up story, what's going to be like at the end, he says, all right, at that moment, then the righteous are going to ask the question, all of you in the crowd are asking, they're going to say, Lord, when did we see you? It's embarrassing to admit, but we don't remember it. When did we see you in any of those situations and do something? Now, just real quickly, and this is for those of us who are Jesus followers. If you're not a Jesus follower, you can just chuckle at us because what I'm about to describe, and it's dumb, but we do it anyway, okay? If somebody asks you as a follower of Jesus, hey, what's a moment in your life where you felt like you saw God or you were closest to God, when you felt most personal? I'm going to guess I know how you would answer. Most of us answer with some moment that was special to us. In other words, it's entirely insider focused, internally focused. So people will say things like, well, I was in service this one Sunday and, something happened. There was this song in the band, blah, 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 or, there was something that I said or whatever. It was just so emotional and it was so personal. Or they'll say something like, Well, I think God was most personal to me when I was reading my Bible at one time or praying, and there was this verse, and it just meant something. It was just what I needed at the time. Or sometimes it's a little more like, well, I was on this mission trip, but this thing happened on this mission trip. Or I went to visit Israel. If you've ever talked to people who go visit Israel, they'll talk about this, which is great. So like I was in Israel, and I went into the empty tomb, came back out. It's just, it just moved me. I've never been the same. So they'll talk about all these moments. Nothing wrong with any of them. But they'll say, well, that's a moment. If you ask me when was I closest to God, I think it was in that moment. And Jesus is about to look at them and us and go, wrong answer. Wrong answer. Nothing wrong with any of that. I hope you do that. But you are not closest to me because you keep your attendance streak alive on Sunday mornings. And you're not closest to me because you memorize a lot of scripture. You're not closest to me because you know a lot about the Bible. Like, all that's good, and I hope you do that. But that's not when you're closest to me. So the crowd's like, well, when is it? Jesus says, well, at the end of time, everybody's going to be confused. They're going to say, Lord, we don't remember. When did we see you hungry and feed you? Or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you needing clothes? When did we see a stranger, and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? We don't remember. And this is the part I don't want you to miss. Jesus looks back at them and says, well, the king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Now, sometimes you'll hear politicians take this, so you may have heard this before. You'll hear politicians take this statement and use it, but they are not using it in context. They don't entirely understand what this means. But I don't want you to miss what it means. Jesus is saying, whenever you see somebody in need and you step in to serve, you step in to help, you step in to care, whatever you do for one of the least of these, you do for me. Jesus is saying, whenever you're willing to help someone in your community, that person, from God's point of view, is someone who matters infinitely to him. So when you help them, it's just like helping God. You help one of God's kids, you help God. Because according to Jesus, what we do for them, we do for him. So Jesus goes, I know you missed it because you didn't think it was a big deal. But when you stepped in and you helped that person who was down, you stepped in and you served that person who was struggling, you stepped in and you were generous towards that person who needed it. Whenever you do something for somebody nobody else is paying attention to, whenever you do something for one of those people, it's just as if I were physically there and you did it for me. What you do for them, you do for him. When you choose to give and serve and love, God takes it personally. And you know why God takes it personally? Because that person you just gave to, served, or loved matters infinitely to him. So you're not going to walk around this week and lock eyes with anybody who doesn't matter to Jesus, which means you can't serve, give, or love anyone who doesn't matter to him as well. That's the example he set for us, and that was the invitation he left us. He said, I want you to love one another the way I've loved you. So, as I said, every year we come together and we try to practice this as a church. And we have to practice it because we forget. We have to practice it because it's not natural or intuitive. We have to practice it because, you know this, we're just going to drift to focusing on ourselves if we're not careful. So we do this all year long, but every year at this time we say, let's practice together what it looks like to give and to serve and to love. And if you're new around here, here's the way it works. We do a thing we call our annual fore offering. And we, a few months ahead of time, pull together a small group of volunteers from our church, and we give them a really fun job. We say, okay, I want you to go out into our communities, to nonprofits, organizations in our communities, and I want you to find out what needs they have and how we could help. And basically, they ask a couple of questions. One of the questions they ask is simply, well, what would make a big difference for you? Because as a nonprofit, there are often things they need in order to serve more people, impact more people, work more efficiently, stretch their money further. But it's infrastructure stuff. And if you've never been in the nonprofit world, it's really hard to raise money for infrastructure stuff. I mean, you can raise money when you're like, this kid, we need $20 to put food, on his table for dinner. You can do that. But when it's, hey, we need to do this so we can serve more than one kid, it's hard to raise the money. So we ask them, okay, what would make a really big difference for you? And our volunteers get a list of projects that these nonprofits have, things that they feel like would be a game changer, but they don't have the funds to do it. And then we ask them, well, what would help you make a big difference with the people you're serving? In other words, is there anything you don't have the funds to do, but if you could do it, it would make an exponential impact? It'd be game-changing for you, but it would be life-changing for them. And so our volunteers compile all of this. They come back. They share all the different projects. And then we try together as a church to fund as many of those projects as we can. That's what our annual 4 offering is. We try to give as big as we can give. We give, for those of you who are new, we give every single penny of this away, every penny. None of it stays internal. We don't use any of it on ourselves. Every penny is given to fund these projects. We even show it to you. We video ourselves delivering the checks to all the different nonprofits, and in a few weeks, we'll show you the video so that you can celebrate the impact that you've made. That is what we do, and it's why we do it. So every year, there are local projects or global projects. I'm going to talk more about some of the global projects next week. Today, I want to spend a few minutes giving you a snapshot of some of the local projects, okay? Now, by local, here's what I mean. We are going to fund and support some nonprofits right here in Callaway. We also are going to fund and support some nonprofits that are located and serve the people in Marshall County, because a lot of you drive from Marshall, so we've got that covered. And for the first time this year, we're adding a new county. Because a lot of you are now driving from here, we're going to fund some nonprofits that are located in Henry County, which is Paris, Tennessee, okay? So not France, Tennessee. So anyway, I'll be honest with you. I had to take a couple years to pray about this one because I wasn't sure we were actually supposed to love UT fans, but I think we are. So it's just kidding. So we're crossing the border into yeah, go Vols. If y'all play 2 halves and still 1, you could really beat some teams. Anyway, so anyway, still got a big win yesterday though, didn't you? That's why you're at church today. You beat Alabama. Congratulations. So that's what I mean by local, okay? We're trying to hit as many of the counties as, we know y'all come from. We know we got people from some other counties, but this year will be these 3, all right? And as some of you know who've been around here for a long time, we focus on 3 big core issues. We're looking for nonprofits who help address hunger, homelessness, and at-risk kids, okay? Those are the 3 big issues we're trying to address with these nonprofits. So I want to give you a quick snapshot of what some of these local projects are going to be like. For example, on the hunger side, there's a nonprofit that does this phenomenal project every single summer. They do a summer feeding program for all the kids in their county who need food, and they're not able, because obviously school's out, they're not getting school breakfast and school lunch, they're not able to get what they need, and there's a shortage of food at home. So there's a nonprofit feeds a few hundred kids every single summer, all summer long. So we're going to take some money, hopefully, and be able to help fund that project for them, which, as you could imagine, is so important, not just from the fact that we want to make sure kids have food to eat, but it's also every week as they're delivering food, it's an opportunity for them to check on these kids and their welfare and just make sure everything is good for them as they're going throughout the summer. So it's a huge deal. It makes a huge impact. We're also going to fund, hopefully, a project that does pretty much the exact same thing, only for senior adults, particularly senior adults who can't get out of their homes anymore. So there's a nonprofit that takes care of those senior adults in their community, and every week they deliver food to them. And again, part of why that's so important is because they're checking on them every week, because most of these senior adults don't have family around here. So it's human interaction, and it's checking on their welfare and making sure their health is okay and everything on a weekly basis. So we're going to help fund that as well. And then there are 2 food banks in 2 different counties, and both of these food banks are serving a lot of people every single month who need food. In one case, it's about 1,500 families every single month, and the other is just a little bit smaller, but not much. And both of these food banks said to us, hey, the thing that would be the biggest game changer is if we could make some infrastructure changes and updates to our facilities. And in both cases, they were different, the infrastructure updates, but in both cases, they were much needed. And if they're able to do this, it will actually help them serve way more people and save money doing it, which will then expand their impact even further. So we hope to be able to write them a check and fund those updates and improvements for both of them on the hunger side. Then on the homelessness side, there's a nonprofit in one of our counties who does a phenomenal job serving people in this area who lose their home, they don't have a place, they're coming through, they need somewhere. They do a phenomenal job not just serving them, but trying to equip these individuals to help them get back on their feet and to be in a stable situation for the long term. So we're going to come alongside them and hopefully make a large investment in them because they have an outreach program that if they can get funded would make a significant impact in the number of people they could serve. So we hope to be able to do that. And then the at-risk kids piece, there's a couple different nonprofits. One is a nonprofit that serves foster families, and we're going to try to give them the funds, the resources they need to be able. They get a lot of donations, but whenever they don't have the thing that a foster family needs, that a foster child needs, they give it all away for free. Whenever they don't have what a foster family needs, if they have some funds, they can just go out and purchase it for them, whether that's a bed or some clothes or whatever the case may be for these kids. So we're going to try to make sure they have some resources to be able to do that for them. And then two of our brand new nonprofits we're going to be supporting this year both work with at-risk kids. One of them does an after-school program to help kids, there are a few hundred of them, I think, to help kids in particular who need somewhere after school to be. So they're in a safe environment, so they're in a constructive environment, a productive environment until their parents are home from work. They do a great job with this. We're going to be able to step in and help them with some of the needs that they have, hopefully. And then the other one blew me away, quite honestly, because I was not aware of it. But there is a nonprofit who they serve specifically families with children who have a disability or families with children who have a rare disease. And the scope and scale at which they are doing that is unbelievable. They're doing an extraordinary job of that. And you probably, if you're not in that world, don't know how many families in our area go through something like that. But they're doing a great job being there for them. And one of the things, this is just one example of what they do, but one of the things that caught my attention, if a family has a child with a rare disease and that child ends up passing away, this nonprofit steps in and they completely foot the bill for the funeral of that child. And that's a kind thing to do, but beyond that, you could imagine these families already have all kinds of medical expenses. And the last thing they need is a funeral expense on top of that to add additional stress in that season of loss and grief. And so this nonprofit steps in and helps with a lot of that. So hopefully we'll be able to step in and partner with them to provide some of the resources they need to be able to do more of that for those types of families. So that's just a snapshot. But that gives you an idea of the kind of projects that we hope to be able to fund over the course of the next few weeks, which is exciting. So if you are new here, the thing that I want you to know is we don't ever set a financial goal for this. I've never come up here and said, we want to hit this number. We don't do that. We only have one goal, same goal we have every single year. Our only goal, and I want you all to say it with me, okay? Our only goal is 100%. Yeah, I want to make sure you didn't miss that because dadgummit, we hadn't hit this yet. How have we done this many years and not got 100% participation? I don't know. Some of you are stubborn. Some of you are trying to make my life hard. So I wanted you to see 100% participation, okay? Which means, and this is, I'm just being upfront. People who've been around here a while tell you, this is the only time of year, this is the only time you'll ever hear me twist your arm to try to get you to give, but I am not ashamed of it at all. I don't care if you're not a Christian. I don't care if you don't call this your church. By golly, we're giving it all away to help people who need it. You should give something, all right? I don't know why everybody wouldn't participate in this. So I'm asking for 100% participation. If you can only afford $5, fine, but participate. Some of you can do a lot more than that. You should do a lot more than that. We're going to do, Jen and I, a lot more than that. I just want all of us involved, okay? Now, before I get to how you can give, if you call Journey your church, I'm going to ask you to do one other step. If you don't call Journey your church, you want to give, you can do it today. I'll show you in just a second. If you call Journey your church, I'm going to ask you, if you haven't yet prayed about how God would want you to participate, I do not want you to give today. I want you to pray about it first. If you're, with somebody, the two of you, pray about it together. And I'll tell you why. Because it's easy for some of you just to write a check, to make a gift, to go online, go on the app, do it, and it's done. And then you're like, check the box, I participated, Matt's going to be happy with me, I'm off. Okay, here's the thing. I want you to invite your Heavenly Father into this process. Because if you will, it will impact you for the better as much as your money will impact the people who receive it. And so I don't want this just to be a philanthropic thing for you. I want you to say, okay, God, everything I've got's yours. How do you want me to participate in this? And do whatever he says. Jen and I are doing that right now. We're praying about it. And we're not going to make our gift today. And the reason we're not going to make our gift today is because for whatever reason this year, we're not exactly on the same page with how much. I mean, it's not like a fight. Don't worry, we're all right. But she had one thing in mind, I had another thing in mind. We're like, let's keep praying about it. So we're going to keep praying about it until we land on a number, and then we're going to make our gift. Because it'd be easy for us just to make a gift, guys. We wouldn't think twice about it. But we want to participate in the way we think our Heavenly Father wants us to, because we want him active and involved in us as much as what he's doing through us. So I want to ask you to do that. If you haven't prayed about it yet, and I gave you a notice last week, but if you haven't prayed about it yet, start praying and then make your gift. You're going to have 3 weeks to figure this out and to make a gift. But again, our only goal is 100% participation. Now, let me tell you how you can give. It's not hard at all. If you have our app, just go to our app, click on the give button, and 30 seconds or less, if you've never given, you'll have made a gift. Or you can go to givejourney.com if you prefer to do that. Or you can scan that QR code on the seat in front of you. Or for those of you who still write checks or want to give cash, if you go out the first set of doors right there and look straight to your left, there's a box that says give on it, and you can put your money right in there. If you can't find it, I'll put a neon sign over it next week, and then you'll, a little finger point, and then you'll know. So anyway, people tell me all the time, we never saw the box, so it's out there. So you just pick whichever way you want to give, and you give. If you go give online, you're going to see that there's a new fund there. There are 2 funds. There's a general fund, and then there's annual foreoffering. So you just choose annual foreoffering. Every penny that goes to that fund, we are going to give away. Now, let me say this, and I'll wrap up. Here's why this is so important. Because there are a lot of people in our communities who cannot possibly wrap their head around the fact that God loves them and he's for them. Maybe because they've never been taught, maybe because of how they were raised, maybe because of experiences they've had. They cannot possibly believe that God would love them. And the only way they'll ever be able to wrap their head around that is if they see we are for them. And it will open up a new category for them that maybe God could be for them too. And there is nothing in our culture more powerful to send the message that we're for them than no strings attached generosity. So that's what we're going to do. And we're going to make an impact. And in the course of it, we're going to remember whatever we do for them, it's like we're doing it for Jesus himself. So today we're going to end different. I am not praying because you got to go pray about this. I'm not doing it for you. You got to go pray about this. I just want you to pray and then go give as big as you can give. And let's make a big difference in our communities.
Hey, if you'd like more content like this, subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our Journey app to access all of our recent message content. And our app is the easiest way to share this content with a friend. For more information on our church or to find our app or our YouTube channel, just visit journeycalway.com. That's journeycalway.com. Thanks for listening.